Hello, hello, YouTube University students, and welcome back to Opa's Garage. And in the garage today, we are once again working on my 2000 F350 Crew Cab Dually with, of course, the 7.3 Power Stroke engine. Now, a little bit of history about this truck. When I purchased it, it needed a high-pressure oil pump. The previous owner was having a drivability issue where the truck would drive for about 20 to 30 minutes and then it would slowly lose power and die. Those symptoms usually indicate that the screens inside the fuel tank are plugged up, and that's what he thought. So he pulled those screens, cleaned them, put them back in, and that did not fix the problem. After that, I don't know if it was him or if he took it somewhere, but they discovered that he was having issues with his oil pressure, and they replaced the ICP and the IPR, and that also did not solve the problem. And after that is when I purchased the truck. I diagnosed it as needing a high pressure oil pump, and I replaced the high pressure oil pump. And after that, it seemed to run fine most of the time. But it did develop a new problem. And it was a very intermittent problem where the truck would start and it would fluctuate the idle. The idle would like surge. I don't know if you want to call it a surge or if it was searching for an idle, or it would fluctuate. But basically, this is what it was doing. Basically, I'm just doing cold starts on the truck a couple times a day, videotaping it to try to catch all the different issues it has at startup. So let's see how she starts this morning. Now, sometimes it would search for an idle, smooth idle, and find it relatively quickly. There were other times where I would start the truck and it would search for a smooth idle, it would fluctuate the idle, and it would not smooth out at all, like this. I don't have my scanner on, but I've got my Hydra set on the stock setting, and this is the erratic idle that I get from time to time. One of the other issues that it had was I would start the truck and it would die, and I would start the truck and it would die, and I would have to do that several times. Most of the time what I would have to do was switch the Hydra that I have in the truck over to the 1200 high idle setting for it to actually stop dying. It would start and it would actually jump up to that high idle, and then I could switch it back to a regular, like a stock program or whatever, and it would idle just fine. Okay, let's see how she's going to start now. Oops, start and die. Start and die. Okay, this is what it was doing. It's one of the symptoms where she'll start and die. So I got it on the number 2 setting, so we'll flip it over to the number 3 setting, which is our 1200 high idle. And but occasionally, even when I flipped it over to the high idle, it would still fluctuate even on the high idle setting on the Hydra. So I've got her on the number 2 setting, and see what she does. Starts, dies. Okay, now we're going to flip it over to the number 3 setting, because last time this happened, even on the number 3 high idle setting, it was not wanting to start and run. Oh, and this time it decides to start and run. Here we go. This is one of the other odd things that happens with this truck. I'm not touching the throttle. And on high idle, which is number 3 setting. Number 3 setting is 1200 idle. She tries to die, and she revs up. Now keep in mind that these were intermittent problems and not consistent by no means. But like I said, most of the time the truck would start, run, and drive just fine. Now, it had fresh oil and a new fuel filter and new oil filter when I did the high pressure oil pump. So I started off by checking all the basics like the oil level in the engine, oil level in the high pressure oil pump, and I once again tested the fuel pump pressure with a mechanical gauge just to make sure that it wasn't a fuel delivery issue. I also did several injector buzz tests, several cylinder contribution tests. I thoroughly inspected all the wiring underneath the hood. I tested the wiring of the under valve cover harness. I swapped out the IDM with a known good one from one of my other trucks, which I'm sure if you guys watched my other videos, you will see that this is not my only Super Duty. I have a few of them. And while I had the valve covers off, I also checked to make sure that I didn't have any leaking O-rings and all the injector spouts had oil coming out of them. Eventually, I was able to monitor the truck when the problems occurred with a 4-scan program. Let's turn the key on. Let's go ahead and start the program. This is what we're monitoring. And we're going to crank her over and see what she does. We got a few more vrooms, and then it smoothed right out. She's in the stock setting, and we'll see what she does. And she's going to start and die. Okay, so we'll flip her over to the high idle setting and see what she does. She's searching for that 1200 idle. And once I analyzed those videos, I was able to run them in slow motion so I could actually watch the numbers as far as the ICP and the IPR. And I realized that more than likely this was my culprit. This is the IPR that I took out of the high pressure oil pump. This is the IPR that the previous owner had put in the truck when he was trying to diagnose the problems that he was having. On this IPR, it has a part number 122-5053. That is not a Ford part number for the Ford IPR. This was also the ICP that was in the driver's side cylinder head to monitor the high pressure oil pressures. If you notice, the connector is brown. Like I said, I've got a few of these trucks, and all the ICPs that I've seen that are Ford ICPs, usually this little plastic piece right here is black. So like I said, I've got a few of these trucks, and some of the trucks that I have I got because they were wrecked, and so I have a couple spare engines, and I went ahead and I pulled the IPR out of that high pressure oil pump. I didn't take the ICP off because I had a spare ICP that was brand new, that I knew was a Ford Motorcraft part. And so I put the IPR and the ICP in the truck, and lo and behold, the fluctuating idle problem went away. And I haven't had any problems with it for a while, until just recently. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of ice on the ground. There's really no snow to speak of, but it's January here in northern Indiana, and it's cold. And like a good diesel owner, I normally fire up my truck, let it warm up. Now this is not my daily driver, not by no means. In fact, that right there is not even my daily driver, but that is my plow truck, and so usually in the wintertime that has a plow on it, and so I was mainly using this truck whenever I had any running to do, had any towing to do. And once again, like I said, being a good diesel owner, I always try to let my trucks warm up until they're up to operating temperature. I went over to a friend's house, and when I was getting ready to leave, I was in a little bit of a hurry, so I went out, started up the truck, let it run for about a minute. When I got ready to leave, I noticed that I had a new problem. Let the wait to start engine or light go out. Long crank. No fluctuating of the idle. As you can see, the engine temperature, engine's cold. But idle's not fluctuating, so we still don't have that problem. But let's put her in gear. And let's give it, I got my foot on the brake, but I'm going to give it a little bit of throttle. Hear that? Here's the way the engine's missing really bad, chugging. Yeah, she goes back to idle just fine. Well, the other day, like I said, I didn't give her much time to warm up, and as I was leaving my buddy's house, boy, this thing couldn't hardly get out of its own way. I mean, I struggled to build up any speed at all. Let it sit for a few hours. I guess it was at night, but when I hooked my forescan program up to it, I noticed that I was having all kinds of really unusual numbers on my ICP and my IPR. And the truck's been running for just a couple minutes. Engine oil temperature is at 80 degrees. But I want you to listen to the engine and then watch the ICP and the IPR. And not sure what's going on here. I placed a little order with Riff Raff diesel parts. I like buying from those guys. They have really good prices. They have genuine Motorcraft parts. Now this is a Ford Motorcraft IPR. It's not even the international one, although I believe the international ones also come packaged like this. I got another IPR for it. While I was at it, went ahead and ordered another genuine Ford Motorcraft ICP. Went ahead and got, I guess that's Alliant Power, it's not Ford. But anyway, a pigtail. I believe that's a pigtail for the IPR. I went ahead and got a new pigtail for the ICP. And then, since I was already ordering stuff, I got a couple crank position sensors, just because you always need to have one of those in your glove box if you have one of these trucks, along with a 10 millimeter so that you can change it out. Takes 5 minutes alongside the road, quick and easy. But at any rate, let's get to changing out these other parts and see if that doesn't solve this new problem that this truck has. Okay, now there are several videos out there about changing the IPR. I'm not going to videotape me changing this one, but one of the things that I did want to mention is your IPR, when you change it, you're going to have to take off that little tin nut, take off the spacer, take off the little field coil, and then this is a 1 1/8. Now your standard 1 1/8 socket will, as you can see, hopefully you can see that, you really can't get on there very well. And so what a lot of people do is they'll go down to their hardware store and they'll buy a set of these. And this one right here, these are actually for working on plumbing, for installing like sinks and faucets and stuff like that. But as you can see, that works. That will work. A lot of times, I mean, these are stamped, so there's some times where you'll actually start to round off the inside of these if you use it very often. If you're just going to do it once or twice, then yeah, this will work for you. I think this one is, these are Cobalt, so they're lifetime guaranteed. Got them at Lowe's, if I remember right. This is 1 inch and 5/32, but like I said, it'll work. The actual socket that you need is 1 1/8 inch. Now, what I did to this one to make it to where I could actually lock it in place, but as you can see, there's a little bit of a gap there, and that little bit of a gap allows me to get the socket fully onto the IPR. And the way that I did that was I took a little ball grinder, and as you can see, you got a hole there, you got a hole there. Well, hopefully that'll focus, but if you look up in there, you can see where I made a little dimple in there, and I made it far enough out to where when the ball locks into that dimple, it actually has a little bit of movement. Now, one of the other things that I've seen somebody do was I've seen somebody take a short extension, like a 1-inch extension, and they cut part of the extension that goes down into the socket. They cut it off so that it doesn't go down into the socket so far that it doesn't allow the IPR to actually come part of the way up through the socket and fully engage with the socket. And then they actually welded that 1-inch extension onto there. So those are a couple ideas as far as if you're going to be doing this a lot. Or I know that Snap-on does make an extra deep well 1.1/8" socket just for this purpose. This one here is a Thorsen, Thorsen 636. I don't know where I got this socket. I've had it forever, but like I said, I made that little dimple, and that works for me. If you just have a regular deep well socket, your ratchet's not going to fully engage and stay on, and that can kind of be a pain in the butt. So let's get this IPR changed and see if I'm right and if this fixes the problem. So one of the things that I wanted to make note of, I opened up the IPR from Motorcraft. Like I said, the one that I took out originally had these 122-5053. I don't believe that's a Motorcraft number, but anyway, it is etched into the field coil there, whereas the new one that I just got has a 1841086C91 that looks like it's etched into the field coil the same way this one is. So maybe this is a Ford Motorcraft one. I'll have to look that number up. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to make note of is you get your field coil, you get your IPR, but it does not come with the spacer, and it doesn't come with the tin nut, or at least this one didn't. Now, I thought in the past that they did come with everything. I thought they came complete, but when I opened the package up, the only thing I had was the IPR and the field coil. So I'm gonna have to check into that. It was all sealed up, so if it was missing parts, it came from the factory missing parts, and it wasn't something that somebody took out from someplace else. So anyway, we're just about ready to fire it up. I got the new pigtail put on. The reason why I wanted to change out the pigtail is this one was looking pretty ratty. I mean, this truck's got some miles on it, so these pigtails are cheap. I think it was only like, I don't know, less than $30 if I remember right. But not saying that could cause a problem, but better to be safe than sorry. So let's finish her up, and I'll come back and show a startup video. Okay, so the moment of truth is upon us. I went ahead and got my laptop, got the ForeScan program running. Instead of running table, I'm going to run dashboard. That way all the information shows up a lot better. If the camera wants to focus, there we go. But you'll be able to see the numbers a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead and turn the truck on. Now, I already started it. I knew that by changing the IPR, it was going to put some air in the system, and so when I first fired it up, it had an awkward idle. It wasn't fluctuating, it wasn't doing anything goofy. It's just, you could tell it wasn't idling really smooth. I'll go ahead and start receiving data. It's been sitting for about an hour. By the way, I run a cabled dongle that actually attaches to my laptop as opposed to the Bluetooth dongle that a lot of people use. I think that through the cable you receive data a lot quicker, and so it's more accurate data than through the Bluetooth dongle. But at any rate, I'll go ahead and zoom in on our ICP and IPR numbers, and as soon as the camera decides it's going to focus, there we go. We'll go ahead and crank her up and see what kind of numbers we get. Now the IPR percentage went all the way up into the 70s, and I'm guessing that's probably because it still has some air in the system, but notice as soon as it started it dropped back down to like 13.5–14%. So the ICP numbers, so the high pressure oil numbers, are in the 550 range. I imagine that I need to stop doing that. Let me zoom out a little bit. So I imagine after I get all of the air bled out of the system, I just drove it down the road maybe a mile and back to kind of purge some of that air out. But I'll go ahead and put it in gear, and you can hear when I start to rev it up. In fact, the truck is actually moving, but it has none of that chug chug chug, no lack of power. I'll go ahead and pull her out here. She's by no means up to operating temperature. In fact, the engine oil temperature has dropped down to 98. I don't know why that is, but we'll pull out here on the road. We'll go ahead and stand on it before it just fall on its face. And she has plenty of power. So I'm going to say that replacing that IPR did the trick. One of the other things that I wanted to make note of while I was waiting around for the engine to cool off, I went ahead and looked up this number, the 122-5053. I Googled that number, put in Motorcraft IPR, and then I put in that part number, and it turns out that IPR is a Caterpillar number. Apparently Caterpillar also has a high pressure oil system for one of their engines that takes a similar IPR as the 7.3 Power Strokes, and so apparently also the Caterpillar part is about $100 cheaper. I think the guy that made the comment, or the guys whose post I found on one of the Power Stroke web pages, said that it was like $179 or something like that for the Caterpillar, the 122-5053. So at any rate, that might be helpful to somebody. I might actually buy one of those and try it out. This one here gave me issues, so I don't know. But at any rate, I believe that man, I wish this camera would focus. There we go. I believe we've solved the problem. I think that the IPR did the trick. Why it is that a used Motorcraft IPR had the issue that it had, I'm not sure. Could be because that engine had been sitting for a while and maybe that IPR was sticking just a little bit. Maybe eventually it would have come out of it, I'm not sure, but I believe now I have definitely solved the problem. So that's going to conclude this video. I know it was kind of long, but hopefully it helps somebody somewhere down the road, and if it does, then please hit the like and subscribe button. That helps YouTube, helps the algorithm of YouTube to put my videos to where they're more accessible to more people, I guess is the way to say it. I really don't know too much about this YouTube stuff so far, but everybody says that like and subscribe is a whole lot better than number of views that you got. So with that being said, y'all keep living your best life and get on out in the garage and fix something.